Most people assume that laws exist to keep society organized and safe. But around the world, there are rules so strange that they sound completely made up. In some places, it's illegal to chew gum. In others, you can get fined for wearing certain clothes or even for owning unusual pets. Many of these laws were created centuries ago, yet somehow they still exist today. And when you start looking at them closely, you realize just how bizarre some legal systems can be. Join us, and let's discover some of the weirdest laws that still exist around the world. Let's go!
Number 13. Tushin, Poland. Winnie the Pooh playground ban. The story of Winnie the Pooh getting banned from a Polish town sounds like satire. It's not. In 2014, the town of Tushin was in the process of selecting a mascot for a newly constructed playground. Winnie the Pooh was proposed as a candidate, and what followed was a town council meeting so bizarre it made international headlines. The central objection raised by council members was the character's clothing situation. Winnie the Pooh, as illustrated, wears only a short red shirt that stops at the waist, leaving him technically pants-free. A faction of the council determined this partial attire was inappropriate for a children's playground and potentially damaging to young minds. The debate that followed produced a string of remarks that were simultaneously confusing and deeply entertaining to the rest of the world watching. The final decision, Winnie the Pooh was banned. The council voted to reject him as the playground mascot and replace him with a fully clothed bear, specifically a Polish fictional bear named Uszatek, who apparently met the required standards of dress code compliance. Disney's lawyers weren't involved. The children of Tushin were presumably unbothered. The international press had a field day. The story spread because it captures something genuinely strange about how local government sometimes works. A council convened to serve a community, spending its time debating whether a cartoon bear's lack of trousers constitutes a moral hazard. The ban remains one of the most searched weird law stories online, not because it changed anything meaningful, but because it perfectly illustrates how bureaucratic reasoning can arrive at conclusions that defy all common sense.
Number 12. Eiffel Tower Paris Night Photography Copyright Law. A foto da Torre Eiffel de dia, completamente livre. Pode postar, vender, usar como quiser. Mas a mesma torre fotografada à noite, com aquele show de luzes que pisca a cada hora, é tecnicamente protegida por direitos autorais, e usar essa imagem comercialmente sem autorização é uma violação da lei francesa de propriedade intelectual. The daytime Eiffel Tower has been in the public domain for decades. The structure itself was built in 1889, and its design copyright expired long ago. But the light show installed on the tower in 1985 was created by a lighting designer named Pierre Bideu, and under French intellectual property law, that lighting design is considered an artistic work with its own separate copyright protection. The copyright belongs to the Société d'Exploitation de la Tour Eiffel, and it runs for 70 years after the death of the creator. This means that professional photographers, advertising agencies, and commercial media outlets cannot legally use nighttime Eiffel Tower images without licensing permission. The law is enforced. French authorities have pursued commercial entities that used unlicensed nighttime photography images in campaigns. For individual tourists posting vacation photos on personal social media accounts, enforcement is essentially non-existent. But for businesses, the legal exposure is real and documented. The rule surprises people because the Eiffel Tower feels like one of the most public objects in the world, a structure visited by nearly 7 million people per year, visible from dozens of neighborhoods across Paris, and reproduced on more merchandise than almost any other landmark on Earth. The idea that its nighttime version exists behind a copyright wall feels fundamentally strange. Yet there it is. One of the planet's most photographed icons has a legal split personality depending entirely on what time your shutter clicks.
I'm going to ask you a simple question. Are you a naturally curious person? If you're watching, I'm pretty sure the answer is yes. This space is made for people like us. To ensure you're always part of this community and receive all our latest discoveries, you just need to do one thing. Subscribe to the channel. It's the best way to stay connected with us. Okay, now that you're part of our Legion of the Curious, let's move on to the next item.
Number 11. Levante Beach, Benidorm, Spain, rules. Picture yourself on a gorgeous Spanish beach. The sun is blazing, the sand is warm, and every instinct tells you to start building the world's greatest sandcastle. But hold that shovel.
In certain coastal towns in Spain, that innocent activity could cost you real money. This isn't a joke or a misprint in some dusty old regulation manual. It's an active, enforced rule that baffles tourists every single summer. Spain's government has gone to great lengths to manage the impact of mass tourism on its beaches. Across different coastal municipalities, a wide range of behaviors are banned, from setting off fireworks and lighting barbecues near the shoreline to using shampoo and soap in the ocean. These rules are designed to cut down on pollution and protect marine ecosystems, which makes a certain amount of sense, even if the enforcement can feel aggressive. But the sandcastle thing hits different. The town of Benidorm introduced a regulation in 2016 that specifically bans the construction of any sand structures on Levante Beach. That means no towers, no moats, no elaborate fortresses, none of it. The penalty starts at a warning and can escalate to a fine of up to $200. Similar restrictions exist in other coastal areas like Tenerife and Mallorca, with exemptions only granted to those who obtain prior permission from local authorities. The reasoning behind it involves preserving the beach's visual uniformity and preventing arguments over space. Apparently, sand structures were causing territorial disputes between beachgoers. Whether that justification is proportionate to actually banning sandcastles is another conversation entirely. But the law stands, and Spanish beach authorities enforce it without apology. So next time you pack sunscreen for a Spanish beach vacation, maybe leave the little plastic shovel at home.
Number 10. Longyearbyen Svalbard Cemetery. Permafrost. Longyearbyen is already one of the most unusual places on the planet. Sitting inside the Arctic Circle in Norway's Svalbard archipelago, it's the northernmost settlement in the world with more than 1,000 permanent residents. The sun disappears for months at a time in winter. Polar bears wander into town regularly enough that residents are legally required to carry firearms when venturing outside. The demographic skews dramatically young, with very few elderly residents, and that's no accident. Here's the strange truth. If you're elderly or seriously ill and living in Longyearbyen, local authorities will arrange for you to be transferred to mainland Norway before you pass away. The city doesn't allow burials within its limits. The local cemetery sealed its gates in 1950 and hasn't accepted a new resident since, and the reason is genuinely chilling. When researchers examined bodies buried there from the 1918 Spanish flu epidemic, they discovered something alarming. The permafrost had preserved the corpses so effectively that the influenza virus was still active and potentially viable. A pathogen responsible for killing an estimated 5% of the global population was essentially frozen in storage beneath the town. The authorities responded by banning all further burials to prevent any future outbreak risk. Beyond the death ban, Longyearbyen has an additional list of rules that feel almost surreal. Cats are banned outright as pets. There are limits on how much alcohol residents can purchase and store at home. And again, that weapon requirement for outdoor travel isn't a suggestion. Polar bear encounters are common enough that it's considered basic safety. Life at the edge of the habitable world runs by a very different rulebook. Number 9. Skamania County Bigfoot Sasquatch Protection Law. Bigfoot, the massive, hairy, ape-like creature supposedly wandering the forests of the Pacific Northwest, has been part of North American folklore for generations. Sightings get reported, grainy footage circulates, and every few years the debate flares back up about whether the creature exists. Most people treat it as mythology. Skamania County, Washington, treated it as a legal matter. In 1969, Skamania County passed an ordinance officially designating the region as a Sasquatch Protection Zone. Anyone who kills a Bigfoot within county limits can face up to 5 years in prison. That's the same sentencing range as many violent felony offenses for hunting a creature whose existence hasn't been scientifically confirmed. The motivation behind the law was actually pretty practical. During the 1960s, Bigfoot mania was at a fever pitch. Hunters and enthusiasts were flooding into the forests of Washington, Oregon, and British Columbia with weapons, hoping to be the first to bring back definitive proof of the creature's existence. Local officials became genuinely concerned that the combination of trigger-happy hunters, dense woods, and poor visibility was going to result in someone shooting another human by mistake. The law was designed as a deterrent, not necessarily to protect Bigfoot, but to cool the armed enthusiasm before someone got hurt. The result is a regulation that reads like a punchline but carries real legal teeth. Washington State later reinforced similar protections. So if you're heading into Skamania County with Bigfoot hunting ambitions, be aware. The county sheriff will not find the charge amusing, and the 5-year sentence isn't a legend.
Number 8.
Banff National Park Canada Animal Permit Rules. Canada's national parks are among the most celebrated natural spaces on Earth. Banff, Jasper, Yoho, and dozens of others representing millions of acres of protected wilderness. The rules governing what visitors can bring into these parks are extensive and designed to minimize ecological impact. Horses and donkeys, for example, can enter with recreational use permits because their presence and potential effects are well understood. Llamas cannot enter under the same permit structure. Bringing a llama into a Canadian national park requires a specialized application process, additional veterinary documentation, and approval from park authorities that isn't guaranteed. The regulatory distinction comes down to disease risk, specifically concerns about the potential transmission of pathogens carried by llamas to native wildlife, with mountain sheep and other ungulates identified as potentially vulnerable populations. The scientific community has been less than unified in endorsing this risk assessment. Critics of llama restriction have argued that the evidence supporting the specific disease transmission concern is thin, and that the practical difference between a horse and a llama in terms of ecological risk is minimal. Park authorities have maintained the distinction regardless. The result is that llama trekking, a genuinely popular outdoor activity in parts of the United States and South America, occupies a kind of legal gray zone in Canadian national park tourism. Outfitters who work with llamas must navigate a permitting process that's more complex than comparable operations using horses, which creates a competitive disadvantage that some argue has no solid scientific basis. Canada's national park regulations are otherwise a model of evidence-based conservation management. The llama exception stands as an outlier that continues to generate industry pushback.
Número 7. Machu Picchu, Peru. Regras e restrições de turistas. Machu Picchu é uma das maravilhas do mundo, literalmente. A cidadela inca construída no século XV, pendurada a 2.400 metros de altitude nas montanhas andinas do Peru, recebe cerca de 1,5 milhão de visitantes por ano. E esse número é exatamente o problema. O local está sendo destruído pelo próprio sucesso, e o Peru respondeu com uma série de regras que pegam a maioria dos turistas completamente de surpresa. Since 2010, Peru implemented a strict entry system for Machu Picchu that divides the site into circuits, numbered paths that visitors must follow in sequence without backtracking. You cannot wander freely. You must follow your designated circuit, stay on marked paths, and exit through the assigned route. Straying from the circuit is grounds for immediate removal from the site, with no refund. The ruins are ancient, the soil is fragile, and decades of unrestricted foot traffic had begun causing measurable structural damage to sections of the citadel. Drones are completely banned over Machu Picchu. The Peruvian government treats unauthorized drone flights over the site as a criminal matter, rather than just a rule violation. The airspace above the ruins is legally protected, and confiscation of equipment plus significant fines are the standard consequence. Several tourists have had equipment permanently seized. Perhaps the most surprising rule: you cannot enter Machu Picchu wearing high heels. It's written into the official entry regulations. The uneven ancient stone surfaces and steep staircases create genuine injury risk, and the heels themselves cause damage to stone that took 600 years to get into its current condition. The regulation sounds like a joke until you're standing at the entrance gate being told to change your shoes, which has happened to real visitors, some of whom came unprepared and had to buy sandals from vendors outside.
Number 6. Dubai, UAE, weird laws tourists must know. Dubai is one of the most photographed cities on Earth. The Burj Khalifa, the Palm Jumeirah, the artificial ski slope inside a shopping mall in the middle of the desert. It markets itself aggressively as a global destination for luxury tourism, and millions of visitors arrive every year expecting a glamorous, permissive experience. What many of them don't realize until it's too late is that Dubai operates under a legal system that can turn ordinary tourist behavior into a criminal matter with extraordinary speed. Kissing in public is illegal in Dubai. Not just passionate kissing, even a quick kiss between a married couple in a restaurant or on the street can result in arrest and deportation. Several tourists have been deported for exactly this. The law covers any public display of affection deemed offensive under UAE moral standards, which are enforced actively and without much tolerance for the "I didn't know" defense. Swearing, including in text messages and social media posts, is a criminal offense. This applies to messages sent while physically inside the UAE, even if the recipient is in another country. Tourists have been arrested at Dubai airport upon arrival after authorities checked their phones and found profanity in messages sent months earlier.
The country's cybercrime laws give authorities wide latitude to prosecute digital communication they deem offensive. Alcohol exists in Dubai, but only in licensed venues, hotels, certain restaurants, and private clubs. Drinking on the street, on the beach, or in any unlicensed public space is illegal. Being publicly intoxicated is a separate offense on top of that. The legal exposure stacks quickly, and Dubai's legal process moves fast. Tourists who assume the city's glittering nightclub-dotted surface met Western-style legal permissiveness have discovered otherwise at considerable personal cost.
Number 5. Detroit Red Wings Octopus Tradition NHL Playoffs. Detroit Red Wings fans are among the most passionate in professional hockey, and the team's playoff tradition involving an octopus is one of North American sports culture's stranger rituals. The practice dates back to 1952, when a fishmonger threw an octopus onto the ice during a playoff game, the 8 arms symbolizing the 8 wins then required to claim the Stanley Cup. The tradition stuck, was embraced by the fan base, and continued for decades. Somewhere along the way, Michigan's regulations against throwing objects onto playing fields during sporting events created a legal tension with this beloved ritual. For years, enforcement was essentially non-existent. Security personnel at the arena were often aware fans had smuggled octopuses in and looked the other way. The unspoken understanding was that certain traditions operated above the letter of the law. That changed in 2011 when the NHL issued a nationwide directive cracking down on object throwing during games. For the first time, enforcement at Red Wings playoff games became real. A devoted fan who had continued the tradition was arrested after tossing an octopus onto the ice during a first-round playoff game, receiving a $500 fine, the first fan actually charged under the existing regulations for this specific act. The incident sparked significant debate among the fan base and sports media about the relationship between institutional rules and organic fan culture. The octopus tradition remains emotionally important to Red Wings fans, and versions of it continue, but the legal reality has changed. Michigan's prohibition on field object throwing now has documented enforcement precedent specifically involving cephalopods, which is not a sentence that appears often in American legal history.
Number 4. Singapore Chewing Gum Ban Law 1992. Here's one that surprises almost everyone the first time they hear it. In Singapore, chewing gum is banned. Not just in certain public places, actually banned. You can't buy it in most stores, can't import it across the border, and getting caught selling it to someone outside of a licensed pharmacy can bring serious consequences, including steep fines. The backstory is far more interesting than the rule itself. In the 1980s and early 1990s, as Singapore was developing its world-class mass rapid transit subway system, a peculiar problem kept emerging. Vandals discovered that sticking gum to the automatic door sensors on subway cars caused the doors to malfunction, which disrupted schedules and cost the transit authority enormous sums in repairs. The Housing and Development Board alone spent an estimated $150,000 dealing with gum-related damage. Singapore's government, never known for tolerating inefficiency, responded decisively. In 1992, chewing gum was officially banned. Every component, manufacturing, importing, selling, became a punishable offense. The law had near immediate results. Subway door failures dropped sharply, and the city's notoriously spotless public spaces became even cleaner. Critics called it an overreach. Supporters pointed to the metrics. The government pointed to the results and moved on. In 2004, a narrow exemption was carved out for therapeutic gum, specifically dental and nicotine cessation products, which can be purchased directly from a pharmacist or physician with proper documentation. But regular chewing gum for casual use? Still completely off the table. Singapore sits comfortably as one of the few countries on Earth where the act of quietly chewing after lunch carries a genuine legal risk. Number 3. German Autobahn rules, speed limits, laws. Germany's Autobahn is one of the most famous road systems on Earth, a network of highways internationally associated with the concept of unrestricted speed. The reality is somewhat more nuanced. Roughly 70% of the Autobahn has posted speed limits, and where none exist, an advisory speed of 130 kilometers per hour is recommended. Still, the sections without limits are genuinely fast, genuinely serious, and governed by some of the strictest driving regulations in the world. The German government views the Autobahn as a system demanding consistent, predictable behavior from every driver.
Tailgating is not a minor social irritant. It carries fines up to $450. Passing on the right is prohibited. During traffic jams, drivers must create emergency corridors for first responders. Stopping on the Autobahn without a genuine emergency is illegal regardless of circumstances. And here's where it gets genuinely consequential. Running out of gas is not considered a genuine emergency. It's considered negligence, a failure of preparation that endangers other drivers by forcing an unscheduled stop on a high-speed road. Germany requires gas stations every 55 kilometers along the Autobahn specifically to remove any excuse for running out of fuel. If you stop on the Autobahn because you've run dry, you're exposed to an unlimited fine, a potential 6-month driving ban, and in cases where your stop creates a genuinely hazardous situation, like stopping in a blind curve or during heavy traffic, prosecutors have pursued prison sentences of up to 5 years. Running out of gas sounds like an embarrassing inconvenience. On the Autobahn, it can be the beginning of a very serious legal process.
Number 2. Las Vegas, Nevada. Weird laws. Strip casino rules. Las Vegas is the city that sold the world on the idea that normal rules don't apply here. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. The slogan exists because the city built its entire identity around permission. You can gamble at 3 a.m., get married in an hour, and order a drink anywhere on the strip at any time of day or night. It feels like a place without limits. And then you look at the actual laws. Feeding homeless people in public parks in Las Vegas is illegal. The city passed ordinances restricting outdoor food distribution in public spaces, officially framed around hygiene and crowd management, but practically making it a legal risk to hand out sandwiches in a park. Organizations that provide food to unhoused individuals must navigate a permitting process that many describe as deliberately obstructive. On the casino floor, the rules get stranger. You cannot take photographs inside most Las Vegas casinos, not of the tables, not of other players, and certainly not of the cash-counting operations. Security will remove you swiftly and without much ceremony. The casinos operate under Gaming Commission regulations that treat unauthorized photography as a potential cheating mechanism, giving staff broad authority to eject anyone with a camera pointed at a game. Here's one that surprises almost everyone. It is technically illegal to pawn your dentures in Las Vegas. Nevada state law prohibits pawn shops from accepting dentures as collateral for a loan. The law exists because of obvious sanitation concerns and the practical reality that dentures have essentially zero resale value to anyone other than the original owner. But the mental image of someone so desperate for cash they attempt to pawn their teeth is exactly the kind of only in Vegas energy that makes this regulation impossible to forget.
Number 1. Bergune, Switzerland. Photography ban. Alpine Village. Bergune is a small alpine village in Switzerland. Exactly the kind of place you've seen in travel photography without necessarily knowing the name. Stone buildings, snow-capped peaks, narrow lanes, the kind of scenery that seems designed for Instagram. Which is precisely why, in 2017, the town formally banned photography of its landscape for sharing on social media. The stated rationale is counterintuitive, but internally consistent. Bergune's tourism board commissioned research suggesting that images of beautiful places can cause psychological distress in people who view them but cannot visit in person. The argument goes that exposure to idealized travel imagery creates a form of longing or inadequacy that reduces well-being, and that Bergune, in the interest of public mental health, would therefore stop contributing to the problem by prohibiting shareable photos of its landscapes. The fine for violating the ban was set at roughly $5. The prohibition did not apply to photographs taken from inside private residences, balconies, from passing trains, or for wedding photography. So a visitor on a train passing through could freely photograph the scenery. Someone standing outside doing effectively the same thing could technically face a fine. The reaction was immediate and global. Travel media picked up the story and disseminated it widely, which meant that Bergune, a small village few international tourists had previously heard of, suddenly appeared in news coverage around the world. The marketing team almost certainly understood this would happen. The photography ban generated more international attention for Bergune than any conventional tourism campaign could have, all while making a semi-serious point about social media, vicarious tourism, and the psychology of vacation envy. The ban was always somewhat theatrical. It worked extraordinarily well. Where did the giants really go?
Still curious? Then don't stop now. The next mystery is already waiting for you. Just click the video on screen. I saved it just for you. See you there, curious one.